back, ladies and gentlemen, to WCS European Challenger. We have one final match for our group stages before we move into those playoffs and, of course, also move into our North American group. But my name is Fear Dragon. I am joined by Jeff in Control Robinson at the desk as we get ready for our match of course, uThermal versus Clem, our only TVZ of the, or non-TVZ of the day.
Yes. 2 Terrans, which will be joining 5 Zergs, 1 other Terran, and 1 Protoss to round out those that have qualified for the WCS EU Challenger Season 2.
Yeah.
5 Zergs, Ravi.
1 lone Protoss holding it down. Mana.
Still mana, by the way, yeah. Nobody expected him at Austin, but now, do we begin to suspect him?
He's living up to stuff. He's living up to the hype, I would say. Continuing to.
Living up to the hype.
Living up to the hype.
Not sure there was. My point was there wasn't hype.
I'm saying the hype after Austin.
Okay, yeah. All right, yeah.
Because, you know, after Austin, everyone's like, wait a second, is he
He's the guy.
good now? Is he consistently good?
He's the Protoss, yeah.
All right.
Absolutely.
But another Terran is going to be advancing on from this group. It is going to be the winner of this last match, uThermal versus Clem. Now, this is not a rematch for any of the other games in the group so far. Clem had a rough start versus Nurchio, and uThermal, of course, just experienced that, a kind of rough match versus Nurchio as well. But Clem looking good versus sort of. Seems like he was able to bounce back and everything. And uThermal still looking good in those games versus Nurchio.
Yeah, they were good games. What I like about this TVT is I got to say this is one of the first TVTs we've seen from the European Challenger side, I think, at all. Seriously,
You know,
Season 1, I don't think we had one.
It's, if we did have any, it was maybe one. There's been very few and far between.
Yeah, I mean, it's been just a few of these guys holding it down. It's been uThermal the entire time, and then he's joined by the odd showing of a Soul, or in this case, Clem. So it's going to be kind of fun to see a TVT, see what these guys have to show us there.
And it's kind of interesting. These guys have played against each other in the past, although not a huge number of times. I would say the most recent time was back in May, about a month and a half ago. They played in the Wordy TV Weekly, and uThermal was able to take that. In fact, uThermal has been able to win all of their series against each other. He has a 100% win rate versus Clem of 4 series. So not a huge sample size. And in almost all those games, Clem is able to at least take a map off of uThermal. But I think that does give a good indication that there's probably still going to be some favoritism toward uThermal here, but it's still very much possible for Clem to kind of overtake him.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, this is new territory. So I actually, normally this is where I feed you some garbage about, you know, totality and matchup. I actually like that you pointed out that they've only played 4 times. Clem's just 16 years old, so as far as WCS is concerned, this is the first we're starting to see of him. I'm sure they hit each other on the ladder all the time, but I have no idea on Clem's TVT, and I know that uThermal has always had a very strong TVT and is still willing to kind of do different things in that matchup as well. So I'm just looking forward to it. I'm kind of, we got the best seat in the house for a very nice, hopefully, StarCraft 2 match here.
Yeah, TVT can be pretty crazy, especially. I think a lot of the openings can get a little bit volatile and crazy. A lot of positional play becomes very important. I feel like this is the matchup more so than almost, like people would maybe say this for ZVZ with Ling Baneling Wars and stuff, but I feel like TVT to me has been the matchup lately where victory can just kind of slip through your fingertips in like a moment because you didn't quite catch the big medevac boost into the main base. You're slightly out of position once, and it feels like the walls just kind of come crumbling down very quickly.
It certainly is very explosive. The meta has gone away for a little while now from the huge Doom drop thing that we had for a while. It's not to say it doesn't happen. It just means that more often than not, we see a mixture of mech and some harass styles, a lot of liberators, that kind of thing. But to your point, yeah, I mean, there's just so much high power, explosive stuff happening that the game can be decided pretty quickly. So that would be fun. That'd be a different change of pace, right? TVZ can tend to be a lot of like trading out and grinding back and forth, and then you get to TVT and all of a sudden it's like everything's on fire and everything's exploding, and one guy can be way behind, but all of a sudden a couple of upgrades kick in, some medevacs are over their bio, and they win.
Yeah. Can make you feel a little bit dizzy when that kind of stuff happens. Yeah. And speaking of dizzy, actually, by the way, part of the reason why we are waiting is uThermal's feeling a little bit dizzy right now.
Uh-oh.
I guess hopefully he's not going to feel too out of it. I don't know exactly what's been going on. I know he recently just flew back home from Mexico after his kind of Austin trip and stuff, so maybe he's just caught a little bit of the flu or something after having pneumonia earlier on, like not about a week and a half ago. Hopefully he's not kind of getting sick again.
Seems like every time he loses, he starts to feel physically ill. Right?
You know, sometimes when you really care about a game, it can do that to you.
He does. He's a passionate man. those Dutch people and their passion, man. I mean, Roddy leading the storm and Harstam starting memes from online. 3 Racks memeing thing starting from him.
Yeah, it was funny. He actually responded to my tweet and was like, you know, I was just being serious. I wasn't trying to start a meme or anything. I'm like, all right. But you do have a reputation of doing it. So like, look, give me a little bit of wiggle room on this one. I wasn't sure.
I like the European scene. I think they're really funny.
Yeah.
They give each other a bunch of hard time, but no, like in a nice kind of jovial way. And
actually, you know who I think one of my favorite like undercover memers are in the European scene? Cyril. If you ever talk to Cyril off of camera, he is one of the biggest memers you'll talk to. It's just like almost everything he says is like a meme. But
well, he does wear a fedora.
Yeah.
He hasn't worn it on camera in a while, but he literally wears a fedora.
I forgot about that. Yeah. I guess he doesn't wear it on camera.
I saw it at Austin. It was at his chair.
That's so interesting. Do you think he just takes it off specifically for like the on-camera segments?
I actually don't know Cyril very well. I just know him as, you know, the player right now, and I'm a huge fan of his play style. And I actually look forward to his interviews because he knows, he's aware of how everyone hates his interviews so much.
Oh, someone told him?
Well, I mean, how can you not? People are just joking about it all the time. But
yeah.
You know what? We're ready to go. The dizziness has been dispelled for right now. It's going to be Clem versus uThermal. Hat versus no hat. Old versus new. Handsome versus handsome, though. They're both handsome.
They're both very handsome young gentlemen. Spawning down here in the bottom right, we have our blue Terran player, the youngster. He is Exceed Sports' Clem. Started playing at the age of 10.
That's awesome.
Spawning up here in the top left-hand side of the map, we have Team Liquid's very own Dutch player himself. It's uThermal.
Last name Schlappy. I can never get over that. It's like a sloppy way of saying sloppy. It's like Schlappy.
Yeah.
It's different. But let's see if he can recover. The battle against Nurchio, as you said, was good games, but it was a 2-0. Let's not make any mistake about it. And for the most part, it didn't ever really feel like Nurchio was being pushed too hard. I think in game 2, certainly you can make a case for that. But even then, it was like good defenses and a couple of good drops from uThermal, as opposed to like, wow, what an epic defense and comeback from Nurchio, anything like that. It was more of uThermal holding his own, but getting smothered, I felt. So
yeah.
Different matchup, a completely different matchup, but sometimes, especially for, and we talked about this too, uThermal is one of those emotional players. It's hard to just 5 minutes later be like, okay, buckle up, you're playing for your WCS life now.
Okay, but uThermal does sometimes play pretty well under that kind of pressure, and sometimes it kind of, I feel like, plays better under that kind of pressure. I'm not 100% sure if Clem is going to feel the same way, and this kind of goes back to the whole being so young and still looking for some of that experience. He's played a lot in online tournaments. As you guys saw before, he's been playing since he was 10, so he's been playing StarCraft for 6 years. And he's actually been playing at a pretty high level for at least 3 or 4, but the difference is when you're on this kind of stage versus you're in a weekly tournament or, you know, like a Ladder Heroes final or something, it's a very different kind of pressure.
I'm at risk of being a bit of a bully here, Fear Dragon. I'm going to put you on the spot. When you say uThermal plays better under pressure, what do you mean? Like, what's...
I think I have seen a lot of situations, and I wouldn't even put it so much as pressure from just an individual match a lot of the time. Sometimes I think that uThermal tends to play better in a game when he's kind of on the ropes, when he's like at match point. And you see uThermal start playing a lot more scrappy, I would say, in that sense.
I do agree with you that when the game gets more chaotic, uThermal seems to thrive. He's a very good micromanagement, but he's also has that unique skill set of he's willing to make the game go into improv territory where it's like, okay, well, I'm bailed out of that strategy. We're doing something weird here. A lot of players fall off. If it's not like fully scripted, not something that they've practiced a whole bunch of, it can kind of noticeably show. We do have 2 Reapers coming out for uThermal. On the flip side, it seems that Clem is going to slide into that kind of more defensive posture, which is interesting because this is, and you know, if we had young Nathanius here, he would point out that this is not the best map for Reapers, right? There's no cliff to hop up into the main. You have to actually get past that bunker to do it. Now, the bunker's DPS is not such that they'll die, but they'll take enough damage where what they can do past that bunker seems fairly limited.
Yeah, and Clem is actually also going to forego the Cyclone that you oftentimes see coming out in TVT. It's just going to go straight up to the tech up. Oh, going to swap it off, I guess, to the Starport. I was thinking he might go for one of those Siege Tanks, but, you know, going for the Banshee opening, also a pretty strong way to kind of play things out. And he's also finally going to get some scouting information of his own, since he's been kind of in the dark. He knows there's a command center, but he doesn't necessarily know what else is behind it.
Yep, not a bad thing to do. The Reaper doesn't have much in the way of utility beyond that. He's going to chuck a grenade, try to stun it for a second, but doesn't get quite as much stun as he would have liked. So all he sees so far now is, again, what he did see, but then also that there is a Cyclone, which doesn't say much. That Cyclone can be followed up by any number of things, like a lot of more Cyclones, a drop Cyclone, etc., etc. So no information going either way so far, unless we've missed a scan.
There is a scan right there.
The other base. Whoop. Yep. Sees everything. Except, well, okay, here's the thing. So the tech lab's not spinning on the starport, so maybe he knows it's a Raven. That could be kind of interesting. But it is a Raven.
Yeah, and Ravens are pretty strong in this matchup. We've seen a lot of Terran players, especially over the past couple of months, utilizing that kind of interference matrix. You shut down your opponent's tanks, you move it forward with your Marines, and kind of snipe everything off. Very, very... Anti-armor missile can be really strong versus Marines, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely love it. Now, with that number of Marines that he sees next to the bunker, he has to kind of infer bio. He also did get that scan, but at the time of the scan, I don't think it saw a whole lot in terms of selling what exactly is going to be showing up.
Yeah.
The reactor there doesn't say it's going to be bio per se, but with that many Marines, I gotta believe he thinks that is what's coming, and that is what is coming. And to your point, Fear Dragon, I do love that Raven. It just does so much. But to get away from that for a second here, uThermal is going to go with a lot of Cyclones. And the scary thing here is the bunker is actually a distance away.
And not only that, but again, there was no tanks made. And typically, tanks are what really help you in pushing back a lot of Cyclones. You see how fast that bunker goes down. The Marines are also going to go down. I think this actually might be something that I don't know that Clem has enough to hold on to this.
It's going to be risky. He's just kind of waffling back and forth. His own building's kind of working against him here. The Raven's going to be a big part of this too. Cyclones are here as well, but it's going to go with the auto turret. A little bit interesting choice. Dies almost immediately.
Yeah, the auto turrets go down really quick to the Cyclone DPS as a building, and now we end up having another one. The command center's getting awfully low on hit points. He's waiting for more Marines to start popping out and out. There is that siege tank getting some good damage done, but it's on the high ground, so another auto turret comes down, but so many SCVs have gone down so far.
Yeah, this is the nice thing here for uThermal. It might just be game-ending damage. Like, if you pull the SCVs to clean up this forest, sure, you quote-unquote win the battle, but you might end up losing the war as 19 SCVs die, 29 to 53. And it, I guess, bears mentioning, because this is what we're paid the big bucks for, Fear Dragon, but in a mirror matchup, when you just straight up lose workers against your opponent that has the same kind of access to the same kind of workers, and they both have, I believe it's 3 orbitals, well, you're just in a rough spot. There's just, I mean, how do you come back from it? You have to do your own kind of damage.
He has to go for the counterattack, and the nice thing is he does have an army supply lead, but it is very much also about positioning. Yeah. Does uThermal have some units that can actually capitalize on positioning besides just Marines in a good spot? I think the Tech Lab on okay, Stim should be finishing up now, or actually just finished up, yeah.
Okay, so he does have Stims, he's got that going for him. It is just the one tank, but the one tank's a pretty big advantage here. No medevacs though, so when, 2 tanks, excuse me. So when both players stim, that's kind of part of it.
Medevac's gonna be popping out soon for uThermal. He's gonna need them.
Anti-armor, do it.
He does have enough energy for it. He has enough energy for one. He can maybe throw down another one later as well.
Medevacs, pretty big deal here. Advantage for uThermal there. Now, nice. Oh, he's just gonna go for it. I was gonna say he could wait, but he's gonna pull him. Here come the boys and the Marines. There's the stim. The Raven dies. He does get off the anti-armor missile, but there might not be enough here to kind of take advantage of that as the final tank does die. And 16 SCVs on the other side do die, but still favor uThermal here, who gets the slightly faster third and did kill more SCVs on the flip side.
Yeah, I'm with you there, but I think that this is kind of turned from a situation where it's a question of, oh, okay, is uThermal just winning here? Is this just kind of what's going to happen? And now it's more sort of more like, okay, well, uThermal has a bit of a lead.
Is this an is it though situation, is what you're saying?
Kind of.
Like uThermal was winning, but is he though? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I think, yeah, it's a little bit of a question now. Like, he's winning, but it's not guaranteed anymore, I think.
I like that. Okay, Fear Dragon, that's what you're saying. I hear an is it though coming out of you. Reluctantly, but I hear
gradually,
it.
Gradually.
Yeah, you're easing into it. You're kind of is-iting though. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, that's the next level meta.
That's right. Inception.
A lot of workers are starting to fall here in the main base, especially those workers on gas. 4 of them going down so far. Those Marines are still alive and taking decent trades here, but is it God.
You're stuck though, aren't you? He does get the medevac, does Clem, so that's going to be a one-way trip for at least a certain number of those Marines. Or actually, no, was it exactly 8 that fit in that? Never mind.
Yeah.
Well.
Just barely. Is it though?
It is what it is.
You've gotten in my head now.
Yeah, I know. But a lot of bio coming out from uThermal. This is kind of that older style. Still some tanks complementing it, but it's a lot of just straight-up Marines for right now. And I think that fits uThermal's playstyle really well. He's one of the better Terrans at dropping in multiple locations. Oh, is that... Ooh, boy. A little bit of a late combat shield, right?
Yeah, I mean, his stim was also a bit later on than uThermal's, as we kind of saw with the initial attack. So he's looking to get some damage done with that. And now uThermal just kind of gets a lead. So before he had uThermal had stim and his opponent didn't, now they both have stim, but uThermal has combat shields, and that can make a big difference in these engagements.
Oh, it makes a huge difference. The stim itself, when you don't have combat shield, does like gigantic wafts of damage. I just said wafts as if that's a word. It simply is not, but...
You should have just rolled with it. I would have believed you.
I'm one of those guys where if somebody else makes up a word, I call them on it. So when I do it, got to call myself on it. I'm just a self-eating monster here. But a 4th base is going to be going down for uThermal, and then this drop does find purchase in the back. It is just the 8 Marines. And right now they're not doing much, but if they get on those SCVs, here.
Clem also very far out of position with a lot of these Marines. He's getting chased down, and at the same time, uThermal is able to snipe off an engineering bay.
I was going to say he's not doing much, but he actually kills it. That's kind of a huge deal. The upgrades are everything in TVT, but these Liberators showing up early is actually such an issue. That's how you push off those tanks. And if he can siphon off the space to get towards that 3rd, that will just be game.
Hot pick up on those tanks, but one Liberator does go down. Unfortunately, a lot of Marines go down to the siege tank fire as well. And behind this, uThermal is taking that 4th base. If he is able to segment off Clem from his own 4th base, he might even be able to cancel it.
Oh, it's the 4th. You're right. Yeah, I said 3rd, but canceling the 4th would be nice.
Oh, siege tank's on siege. Clem finding opportunity. He snipes off one of the Liberators. Takes the siege tank volley in the process, but it is about uThermal pushing in for the right-hand side at the exact same time. And Clem, does he have some good star sense about this? Does he know that this attack is coming on the right?
If star sense, you mean by... Oh, no, actually, I thought you meant on that attack. No.
No.
Keep your eye on the orbital, by the way. He never did repair it, did Clem, so it's at, like, less than half health, which right now, not the biggest of deals, but if that tank gets picked off or some Bioforce shows up over there, that's one of the easier kills you can make.
Yeah, uThermal almost losing this tank, though. It looks like it's going to go down. Oh, I love that. That's so cute.
My God.
Kills off the tank on this left-hand side push. This makes this a lot less scary, but uThermal goes after the SCV for a moment, goes after the command center. He is going to be able to get some damage on. He might be able to draw enough of the army out of position to move in for the right, but not opting to move forward as of now. But he's still winning these fights.
Yep. At the very least, it slows down the production on that orbital. Falls away from this, still maintaining a 20-some-odd supply advantage. In fact, it was a little bit closer before this whole thing began, so the endeavor was profitable. Medevac empty. Just need to recall that back home with your Nexus. Easy peasy.
Yeah, you can get around to that at some point with some energy.
Wait, Terrans don't have that? Ha!
How do you even play StarCraft?
How do you even play StarCraft? Was a big Bioforce, and you were saying some kind of star sense coming out from Clem. He once again sniffs out this big army movement, but he's a little bit slow to get over there. One of his tanks really low in health, and it's at the front.
Gotta be careful with that 2-2 upgrades versus 1-1 upgrades as well. And look at that orbital command go down.
It was full health, I promise you. 2 seconds later, it's gone. Now, 4 tanks there with your Bioforce, you can't really go in, but the position's won. Medevac spots that they unsiege. Thermal's gonna jump on that. He's gonna pay dearly. It's kind of a funny thing to watch, but in TVT, you can kind of do that. Not forever, obviously, but you can be like, oh, darn, 4 tanks hit me for free.
Clem trying to get some vision with the medevacs, but dances a little too close to those Marines. He goes forward with the siege tanks. He's going to end up losing one of them in the process, but he should be able to push back a lot of this force for uThermal. It's becoming costly.
Yeah, they're just kind of trading at this point in time. It's not necessarily better for one or the other. I guess where it does become better for one or the other is that uThermal can afford this, right? He stops the 4th base from happening. He's taking a 5th top right, and yes, good pick off on those Liberators, but each time they're exchanging and uThermal can just afford this better, well, it's getting worse and worse for Clem.
Yep, and another huge round of units coming in on that right-hand side, which Clem has been respecting. He's kept a lot of units over by that 3rd base, ready to defend it, and that orbital command you mentioned was still a little bit low on hit points, but it is about to split up here. uThermal, you can see he's just up a decent amount of supply right now.
He's up a bit of supply, but he's also the first to Liberators, and we keep seeing them get picked off. But keep in mind, they're dying because the Marines have to step forward, do something about them, and then taking shots from tanks. So uThermal's using them as, again, that war of attrition of just kind of exacting a little bit more out, more bang for his buck.
Oh, uThermal sees that there's no Marines on this side of the map, so he goes after those tanks. He's able to get all of them and have more Marines left over at the end of the day. He's going to get the orbital command. He goes down.
Dies right there in front of it. The SCV still they just want revenge at this point in time. It's a tragic thing to see. Bloodlust has taken them over. They do get on top of that. And one SCV, if given enough time, will claim that tank as well. But of course, time is not on his side. And with the death of that and all the SCVs, Clem's holding on for pride. But I mean, it's a 60 supply difference. And in TVT, you know, 10, 20, you can kind of work with that. But 60 and 2 bases getting sniped, forget about it.
I almost feel like this is at the point where you just pick up your entire army, you maybe even pull some SCVs to repair, and you just go for the main base, try and cut off production, and turn this into a wonky base trade or something, because I feel like he's just going to fall further and further behind. It's now 3-3 versus 2-2. Look at these Marines still taking decent trades in those low of numbers.
Yeah. And it's just been a mauling, by the way. uThermal has been just all over Clem. Clem had that initial push, the kind of counter push 5-10 minutes ago, or not 10 minutes ago, but about 7 minutes ago or so. And since then, it's just been uThermal on his half the map. And now uThermal, by the way, is expanding to the, 3 o'clock base, we can call it. But that's kind of Clem territory. And over there, sure, he's just going to take all the bases. Why not?
I mean, at this point, there's not a whole lot more to lose, because as long as he's keeping Clem's entire army occupied with his own aggression. I mean, when was the last time Clem actually got to be aggressive in any way, shape, or form? It was like Cyclone aggression at the very beginning of the game. Was uThermal's side being offensive? I can't actually think of a time that Clem was being offensive.
Yeah, if only your co-commentator had just talked about exactly that point. But the drop coming in here over, and this is going to be that problem when you're falling behind like this and you're down in army supply. It's uThermal that can afford to grab 2 medevacs, chuck them at the opponent, and get the win. Clem down 0-1, and you know what? It's not even that I thought he played bad or something. He actually, you were kind of talking about the Nurchio uThermal series. That was a good series, but 2-0. I thought Clem played really well. It's just that initial push did so much damage that he was just always behind, and uThermal never let him get back into it.
Yeah, and I think that's also part of the danger of when you forego both Cyclones and you also don't go for those fast siege tanks with that factory. If you're trying to go for like the start where you get up the really fast Raven and stuff, that kind of play can work if your opponent doesn't go for 6-7 Cyclones and just push across the map. Like Zombie Grub always, I trust her as a Terran player, would always tell me like, yeah, if your opponent's making a bunch of Cyclones, the reason why you can't just go mass boxes in the matchup is siege tanks come out. Siege tanks are what push those back.
Okay, I was trying to wrap my mass boxes. I was like,
mass box. I like to take Nathanius' term for it.
Yeah, I know.
Box
they're a little shoeboxy, yeah, for sure. Yeah. It was also kind of the spacing of the bunker, right? It was so far forward because it wanted to kind of stop Reapers from getting in, but in doing so, it was hard to repair that in time.
It's hard to repair versus 6 Cyclones of DPS, though.
Fair enough. Even if it's close, you're right. It's probably a little bit of an impossible pull. So I think Clem, what do you think, Fear Dragon? Can he kind of look at that game and say, shucks, that sucks, but he can feel pretty okay about it? Because even being, I mean, he's down 20 SCVs and he still held on for a long time.
Yeah, you know, I actually feel like there was that point where you go into that kind of loss. You're like, ah, dang it, I didn't have the units I needed. I took a risk and cut some things in my build. And it kind of goes poorly. You're like, okay, whatever. And then he actually does a lot of damage with his own counterattack and be like, hey, you know, maybe this is still a thing. But then it's the fact that it was like 8 minutes of drawn out, just everything is going wrong. I feel like that feeling of losing sinks back in. Even if you were playing from behind, you kind of acknowledge that. That feeling sticks with you, I think, in the next game a bit.
So that's where you side on that? You think that
I think it's still a little bit rough. I believe in his potential to still come back in the next game, but that was a long time to just feel like you're losing.
Yeah, it's kind of it's we don't have time or obviously the knowledge even, but it is an interesting talking point to start with is when these young players kind of take a loss like that, how do they take it? I've always erred on the side of part of the reason why in StarCraft we've had success from a lot of young players, not 16, mind you, but you know, 18, 19, 20 years old, is because of their ability to kind of get over it. But to your point, yeah, it was a long, drawn-out pummeling, really, where it was like you're holding on, but he's getting the worst end of it the entire time. So I kind of like that stuff, and hopefully we'll get a chance in the future to talk to Clem more, get some winter interviews with Smix on the stage and stuff like that. But for now, we just have to kind of interpret it through his play, see how he bounces back into uThermal.
Yeah, the one thing I will say is I don't like to bring it up too much because I feel like it's almost a little bit in the past for Clem. He's still very young and stuff, but this was almost like a year or two ago. I know that I used to hear a lot of stories about him not being the most jovial person after losing games on the ladder. He was kind of the person that would message you, write his feelings about the kind of match and stuff. But granted, again, that was maybe like a year or two ago. He's still a young 14-year-old kid. I think I've heard that he's gotten a lot better, and he seems to be in a much better spirit. So I don't want to read too much into it, but I know he does have a bit of that past as well.
I agree, and if it's funny because it's like maybe all Terran players do a little bit. Right? Like,
yeah.
Thermal's not too foreign to that either. But they're handling it now well, nice. Or oof, those are words. They are handling it pretty well now. Like I said, we've seen some proxy barracks and stuff like that, and that's where old Poppy Jeff might type a little XD towards you or a lol or something. But these guys are all GGing. They're all keeping it together.
All right, well, we're going to be starting down here in the bottom right-hand corner of the map, top of the blue Terran player from Exceed Esports. It is Clem. And spawning up here in the top left, it is our red Terran player from Team Liquid. It's uThermal.
Do you remember, I was trying to rack my brain about this, Robbie, but, or Robbie. Is it Raynor that's now old enough for Valencia?
Raynor was not old enough for Challenger for this Valencia, but he's going to be old enough for Valencia, I believe.
So his birthday's like this week or something crazy.
It is. I remember, yeah, it was in June. It was in the middle of June, or it was in July or some early July, something along those lines. Then I think it was Clem that turned 16 in February, and Future from North America turned 16 in like March.
It's kind of fun, you know. We got these young players showing up at WCS or just missing it because that's literally how young they are, but still making appearances. So it's kind of a fun time to be a StarCraft fan. We have a lot of these older players. There's talks of MC streaming again. You know, MMA was just doing interviews with their documentary. But then there's also these guys that are like not old enough, but becoming old enough to compete. It's really cool.
Absolutely. And we've been seeing also even some of the players that have been around for a while kind of coming up in the scene after years and years of playing. And
look at Mana.
Mana coming back, actually. By the way, want to note Clem going for the SCV Scout early on, as he does go for a pretty quick expansion play here, and he's going to know, I didn't see an expansion from you, uThermal, and he should know that there's going to be most likely a 1-1-1 opening.
I do like him changing up the pace there. To your point, exactly. Gets an eye on the early tech, because that last game, that was critically one of the things he was missing, right? We talked about the Reapers not being able to get in. But in this case, he will. Now, the SCV went up to the top right in kind of a trolley spot. I was wondering if we're going to see a proxy, but I think this might just be to evade the watchful eye of a potential Reaper and then move over for additional information.
Okay.
I think.
I'm waiting for him to
starport.
Maybe it's even a little bit of both. Yeah, you evade the Reaper, and then you go in with an even closer starport.
Could be. Fast Liberator, perhaps.
Yeah, factory's still finishing up, so we'll see in a bit. But, of course, uThermal's own factory finished up a good bit earlier on, and he's not going up to a straight-up starport. He's, in fact, just going straight into a Cyclone. I mean, it worked last game. Why not go for some fast Cyclones this game as well?
Why not? You know, they're good against a lot of different things. There's not, like you were talking about, and Zombie Grub apparently advises, an early tank can hold them off, but even an early tank becomes fairly passive, right? Like, if it gets out in the field, then that's when all of a sudden you can actually see the shoe boxes bring it down.
Yeah. It certainly does kind of commit you to being a bit more defensive for a while, that's for sure. But uThermal keeping a good eye on things, and hey, he says, actually, you don't have that many Marines in that bunker, so he runs in with the Reapers and runs in with the Cyclone. And what does young Clement have right now? The Cyclone denies mining from the natural. There's only 2 Marines chasing down a single Reaper that's running around rampant. Yeah. This is a bit of a problem.
It's just so, you know, I've said this a few times, but when you're running good, right? Like, just at this time, there's not much here. It looks like all of this will end up dying. 4 SCVs, actually, instead of the 5. So, you know what? To kind of say it, I'm not sure it was so great. He's up 2 workers. He is only down a little in army, so I think it's a fairly okay trade. But I was about to kind of talk about how it's just so great for him, but I don't think it necessarily was. It's not bad, but it's not super great.
I'm actually with you on that, because you have to remember that...
move command.
Both of them on move command. I think that uThermal's going to be a little less happy about that one. But uThermal went for the factory before throwing out the command center versus a command center right after barracks. So with the earlier command center, uThermal needed to get some damage done. So he does get some damage, but he trades it out for some also expensive units.
Yeah, and I think to kind of bolster your point, Fear Dragon, if you look at that, they're almost dead even. I mean, it's just a supply difference of 1 or 2, and now it's actually even. So I think you're right. I think just the difference in openings meant that uThermal really needed to do something, and trading out. The kind of cool thing about trading out a Cyclone and a Reaper is the Reaper, of course, becomes obsolete as the game goes on, and then the Cyclone, do you ever look at a fight and go, man, if he had that one more Cyclone, this would be completely different? Probably not. It's not like a tank or something like that, right?
Yeah, only in TVP when I get Reactor Cyclone all into something. But yeah, to your point, I don't think that that's really going to be the case as much in this TVT, especially as we start getting up into large numbers of Marines. Neither of these players are really making a bunch more Cyclones, and they're both just going into that tank production. So we might actually have a more even-looking game going into the mid-game, so Clem not going to be playing from nearly as far behind as the last game.
Agreed. And we'll have to see if he can make good on what we were kind of talking about, which is that with perhaps a better start, can Clem actually outpace uThermal and not get mauled down so bad there. The big scan by uThermal, by the way, as we did see pictured here by our lovely observer, Mr. Ravi, showed everything. He saw the Bioforce, he saw the swapping of the starport, and he saw the tanks coming out. So they both know the game's afoot. They're both playing with very similar things, but yet it's, again, uThermal getting here first.
Yep. uThermal even somehow having a couple more Marines and another extra Viking out, although I think the reinforcements are going to be a little bit further behind. So it's looking to be a very even army composition, but this is some really dirty positioning. But there's no medevac, so we can't elevate our Marines over at least.
Not for now, but as you point out, the Viking count's going to be huge, right? That air superiority means that he can spot for this, he can start hitting the gas. He already canceled the base starting in there. This is bad. This is really not good for Clem.
All right, Bunker also goes away. He's going to try and intercept this army. The Marines, if they can snipe off one of those Vikings, or heck, even just take out the Raven, they could be really nice. But the anti-armor missile potential is also huge here for uThermal.
Very precarious situation for both players. uThermal setting up the siege, but if he just gets cleaned up here, it's going to be really bad. Coming forward is Clem, though. He's getting fairly impatient. There's the disabling.
He actually ends up getting a huge anti-armor missile down on a ton of these siege tanks and the Marines. He cleans house. It's like having a +3 weapons upgrade over your opponents, and there's no bunker anymore.
No, there's just the one tank coming over, and it's actually exposed. If uThermal can snipe that tank, this whole thing might get broken open, and he does. Even the Vikings behind actually have decent DPS, by the way, and still the one Cyclone. Kind of funny enough, we were talking about this, but now with the tank in position, this might be it, Ruby.
Okay, this SCV is being pulled off the line, but they're going into siege tank fire, and everything is clumped up. The siege tank actually really well targeted, fired over here from uThermal, does not splash damage his own units, goes after the Marines to allow those units to survive as long as possible, kills off 20 workers.
This is bad. This is bad. I mean, he is able to kill it, and the tanks actually were shooting kind of individual Marines to put my monocle on and be like, uThermal could have done this slightly better. But I think he did enough damage that he's just going to push forward here. And the big deal is the tank positioning. It's not oh, wow. Well, I'm going to stop myself because this could be kind of nice.
Ooh, yeah, TVT, a volatile matchup because if you're out of position just a little bit, the medevacs do spot things out. Is he going to be able to move back in time? He is starting to react with a handful of these Marines. The reinforcements popping out, but
tank on move command just kind of comes out of the factory. Now it's SCVs. There is nothing here. There's just Marines coming out. I don't know.
The production is pretty far off from completing.
Flip side of the map, by the way, Fear Dragon.
Yeah. I mean, he should easily be able to clean up all of this stuff, but the question is this going to turn into a weird base trade now?
Well, it is. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is like a couple of kittens base trading, though, right? Like, the DPS on both sides is kind of funny, but there's just now the medevacs here. No tank to anchor that high ground, but both players just don't have that much to work with. Now, uThermal has more. He's going to go for the defense here.
Yep, SCV is coming off the line. They're going to try and get on top of the siege tank where it can't really do as much damage to him. The siege tank friendly fire also helping out a little bit versus those Marines. It looks like uThermal should be able to clean up at the same time on the other side of the map. He is losing out on a lot of his units now, gradually losing those Marines, but he has enough to push forward and take the 2-0 victory to advance out of Group C.
Nicely done by uThermal with that signature aggression, just kind of getting into position a little bit earlier. And we've always talked about positioning in TVT being a very big deal. So it's cool to see uThermal utilizing both his skill and his kind of savvy experience to carry him through this. And that completes an all 2-0 group. There were better games. I will say that the results I mean, what do you think, Fear Dragon? Were there upsets today, or did you expect Nurchio and uThermal to make it out?
You know, I think the end result of uThermal and Nurchio making it out is not a crazy surprise for most people. Those are not only the seeded players or the higher seeded players, but they're also they're kind of like the champions. Those are the people that win tournaments.
Yeah.
But I do think that's sort of him losing to Clem.
The way he did, for sure.
The way he did. Actually, specifically the way he lost his matches was, I think, a little bit more of a surprise, especially coming off of the back of, like you said, not an amazing performance at Austin. A lot of people look to they know that he's capable of a lot, so maybe it's just not really he's feeling it right now. This past month has been rough, but I really hope that he's able to kind of shape up and look better for Valencia.
Agreed. And I would just add to that I think Clem looked good, had some great moments. And this is the kind of group where, like, he didn't beat uThermal and he didn't beat Nurchio. I don't know that anyone's going to hold that way far against him for such a young guy, but hopefully we'll see him in that open bracket at Valencia, because while he is out here and we won't see him in the playoffs, he looked good. He had some pretty darn good moments, and hopefully we'll get to see more.
All right, and of course, with that being said, we now know all of the 8 players that have made it out of our European group. And of course, that is going to be joining with the players that advance out of Group D as we take a look at that kind of schedule and we see everything that's sort of played out so far. Had some pretty fun games, like you said, all 2-0s.
Yeah.
But despite that, I feel like this is some of the best games we've seen, or the most entertaining games we've seen from any of the groups so far.
Absolutely. We saw a good mix of cheese and just strong macro play and great play in general. And the good players looked good, by the way. That's one thing to talk about, too. We've definitely seen some players advance where it was like, were they really tested? It got kind of weird. Not to name too many names, but I think Zeal, going back to day 1 in the NA group, he had some great moments, some very bright play, but also some low points. Whereas for me, Nurchio and uThermal, the only low point for uThermal was getting beaten by Nurchio, but even then, good play. Otherwise, Nurchio and uThermal definitely looked like the best players in this group and are rewarded as such.
And I'm really excited to see uThermal, or I should say Nurchio, playing so well today, looking really, really strong. Like you said, I think there were moments where uThermal was able to push back Nurchio, but it was never pushing him back to his side of the map and feeling like he was actually seizing control of the game. It was more just he's doing a really great job defending against impressive offense from Nurchio. So I feel like this is a Nurchio that we can see and look forward to in Valencia, which I might be wrong on this. I'm going to put myself on the spot here, but I think that Nurchio was one of the players that actually won Valencia in like 2016 or something. WCS Valencia.
I think you're right, but
so,
we need Roddy. We need Roddy's whale brain.
You know, we'll have to confirm with Roddy when we move into the North American segment, but that's an important tournament for him, and it's really awesome to see Nurchio looking to be in such good form for, of course, Valencia coming up. But ladies and gentlemen, just to really quickly recap some of those players that have actually made their way through. I think we had all the Team Liquid players make it, or all the Team Liquid players that actually made it through. Liquid, Snoot, Mana, and uThermal.
Not bad for them.
Wait,
5
what happened
Zerg,
to
2
Tealo?
Terrans, 1 Protoss.
What happened to Tealo?
Didn't qualify.
Yeah. Well,
He just had to.
yeah.
Tealo's out there somewhere. He's listening. He's like, I
know.
love Fear
I'm
Dragon.
sorry,
He said that,
Dario.
and he's like, no. No, he's fine. One of my favorite things about Dario is he's actually completely reasonable about any analysis of StarCraft.
He is. But okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys so much. Of course, if you do want to check out all of the awesome players that actually made it out of their groups, I would actually really recommend go find their Twitters. They're actually sometimes very, very entertaining. And of course, it also is a nice way to kind of send them some love, congratulate them for making it to the playoffs. They'll be playing next week. I think it's going to be probably on Saturday, the European group. Playoffs. I don't want to put myself too much on the spot here, but I think that Europe is going to be playing on Saturday, North America on Sunday, if I understand correctly.
It's at least next weekend.
Yeah, it's next.
We know that much.
It's next weekend for those playoffs. Those 8 players are going to be playing in a single elimination bracket. But coming up next, we still have to settle who are the last 2 players to make it out of Group America, and I literally mean Group America, United States of America, as 4 players duke it out in Group D. We'll see you guys in a little bit with WCS America.